Hi everyone, I'm Billy Hafiz and I'm the AVP events for AHSC. As part of our career series for this week, we are interviewing Jessica Matthys, our lovely Jessica Matthys, so that we can get a little sense of how to write a resume, some resume etiquette. This is Jess.
Hi, everyone. As you heard, my name is Jessica. I'm a graduate from Western from the Arts and Humanities sector for both the Museum Studies and the Art History and English Language and Literature. So currently I'm the Museum Studies Collectives Director and I work at London Public Library. So I help with resumes all the time. um, so I guess we can just jump right into it. Do you want to ask me the first question?
Yes. Okay, so how do you write a resume that helps you stand out in a crowded market, tells your unique career stories, and makes you pass those nasty resume robots?
So, in order to make yourself stand out, you're going to really want to read those job descriptions. They're going to have like definitive skill sets that you're going to want to, check off those boxes. And then there's a couple other ways to make yourself stand out too. But those resume robots, they're really going to be looking for those key words, key specific words. So maybe it's initiative, maybe it's motivation or teamwork, or maybe it's a very specific degree that you're supposed to be holding or work experience. So making sure that you include that information is key. Another way to do this, just to make yourself stand out, is to do a little bit of research into those companies that you're applying to. Every single one of your resumes and your cover letters, they're going to be different. They're going to be tailored to each job that you're applying to. So yes, it's key that you take some time here to really read through and don't apply last minute. It never really works out. So by doing a little reach into the company, you can even just go to their website, go into the staff directory and see who you are actually applying to. Having an actual name rather than addressing it to whom could be concerned, it does wonders.
Mhm.
Making sure that you have a header with your information and your contact information, and right below it, addressing it as a letter to that company. It's very, very important. Also, making sure your language and your formatting matches throughout your cover letter, and making sure to sign off with a sincerely is in your name. I used to do as a young girl, I would even sign my name and hand off my resumes. It was just like an added touch. In today's market, you're not really dropping off resumes in person, it's more online, but you can still even add your signature there. And that's just a little added extra. It just goes that extra mile.
Yeah, especially with COVID, but it's good that you can do the thing where you scan your signature or you like write it out and then like it goes on. So it's a really good idea.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And how do you identify and quantify your professional accomplishments in your resume?
So by that, I think you mean like how do you rate them on a scale for that job? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not necessarily a scale.
Okay.
Like it could just be like how do you format it or how which ones are you supposed to put in? Like you shouldn't be putting on too many, I assume, or too little.
So as long as every single job posting will have those requirements, that requirement section, and sometimes they're sneaky and they'll have some more requirements kind of in like the little blurb before. So that's why you should read through it. But I usually put them in order of the way that they've labeled it out. So a lot of the times they put work experience and education experience first. So depending on which one is first in their job description, that's how I actually mirror it in my resume, because that's what I'm assuming is how they're going to be looking for candidates. Those are their highest requirements, and I go from there. Um, but yeah, you also should be taking a look at what you've been working through the term and finding new skill sets throughout. So whether it's teamwork or presenting, so different types of communication styles, email writing, those are all really important, and you've been doing them throughout your university or post-secondary careers. Um, and also just teamwork is essential, and taking initiative. Those are going to be two things that you're always going to want on your resume. They're super important, and all of you will have it. I think throughout, I don't know anybody who's gotten through university without some group work. So
Even during COVID.
definitely, yeah, definitely identify and quantify that way based off of the job description. It's going to be a lifesaver for you.
Yeah, and I feel like it's easier to kind of do it too, because then you can just look and be like, check, did this one, check, did this one, you know? Definitely great advice.
Definitely looking at the same screen and being able to look and highlight. If there's ever words that you're unsure about, I do this all the time. A lot of the time, job specific terms, they have fancy lingo and it can be broken down into something simple, but I'll have to look up an acronym. I'm terrible at acronyms. So I'll give you an example. Library Integrated Systems is LIS. And I always have to look up words like that. And I know that I've also worked in these areas for a long time. So I have the experience. It's just frightening to see it in such professional jargon. So make sure to look this up to make sure that you actually are familiar with it. And you'll be surprised how familiar you are with those.
Definitely.
It'll give you a little bit of a confidence boost.
Okay, and in what ways should you curate your resume?
So you're going to want to have to curate your resume so it matches your branding. This will be, again, job specific. It's going to be very different if you're applying for, let's say, media studies jobs versus a library job. You can put a flair in there, and depending on what you want to, it's basically how you're putting your first foot forward in the job professional market. And how do you want to be seen? Like what's best represents you. It can just be that black and white resume. It really can. You don't need to have all these colors and all these photographs. You can have it simple and straightforward as long as it gets the information out there. It's just dependent on how you want to curate yourself. So you can have a little bit of fun with like personal branding here. But always make sure to have a simpler version. If you want to go all out, have a simpler version on hand, just so you can put on your LinkedIn or your Indeed, which are two things that you should do. And if you want to have something on that, say your personal website, because that's now a very popular thing to do, is to have your own website, then you can have a bit more of a fun spin with it. I've definitely felt like I should make my resume super colorful and super fun. And I have to remind myself that that's just not the personal branding that I want to put forward. But the other thing you want to do is, so when you're curating your resume, again, it's going to be over and over again. You want to curate it based on job description. So while you're putting your best foot forward and the things that you want to showcase about yourself and your work ethic, you're also going to want to make sure that they're job specific. With your curriculum vitae, that's different. That's a whole other can of worms. You get to continuously add information there. And you can set it up in a way that is best formatted for you to find that information to make those resumes and those cover letters. It's going to be that area where you pull that information from for writing. And I think that everyone should be putting as much information in there as possible. All of the things you've got published, your internships, your volunteer experience, etc. So, but you can have fun with this. It doesn't have to be a boring endeavor.
Yeah. So like how, I shouldn't say how, your CV or your resume can look very different than like that jargon, that very common like basic black and white format that you mentioned. It's okay if it is what I'm hearing from you, but like it's actually okay if it isn't as well, right? Especially in our fields.
Yeah, look at the job you're applying to. If it's going to be a job that is a little bit more colorful or it works with media, then yeah, absolutely put a little bit of your touches in there. That's showing a skill set. So if you're applying for a job that requires to make branding, then yes, you want to show your skills as making your own personal brand, making it show you. That's going to be something that they would notice right away, right? So that would show your abilities to work with Photoshop, or let's say if you use Canva. And that's just a great way to put the first foot forward, is showing another skill set you have.
Yeah, it's definitely also shows your creativity, I think, right? Definitely a good thing. Okay, great.
Arts and humanities, creative bunch.
We love it. Okay, what are some common pitfalls you have come across personally, and how did you correct them, or how do you go forward avoiding them?
Um, I mean, I make mistakes all the time. And my biggest pitfall is letting those mistakes kind of like hold me back. The other thing is thinking that I shouldn't apply to a job because I don't have all the requirements.
Mm,
Um, so the first one, I made mistakes in thinking that when I was going out and getting critical help with my resume, I was finding that all of these different people were telling me different things. And it was based off of their personal branding. Some of it was good criticism, but it was learning the difference between their branding and the actual criticism. And that comes with time. You always should continue to take criticism from those who've applied to more jobs in those fields, and it's going to take a lot of red tape and red underlining, and you're going to have to continuously edit, and don't let that bog you down. It's just a continuous process. The other one was, and I just forgot it already. Oh, right, I was making sure that I was applying for jobs where I don't hit all the markers.
mhm,
They're made to find the absolute ideal candidate. And most of the time, those people are very few and far in between. So I always tell myself and everyone else who's applying for jobs to just do it.
mhm,
Because a lot of the time, if you get into that interview, you can rock a phenomenal interview and have a great connection with those who are doing the interview process. And that can be more important and significant than your actual resume. So always apply. Let's say you're working on getting your master's. State that in your cover letter that you're finishing it up. It might not be done, but you're on the way there.
mhm.
Or you have 2 years experience, not 3 in the public sector realm. Fine. But you've also got lots and lots of other experiences throughout your university or, graduate experiences. So it's you can pull different areas. It might not be just work specific, but there's other things you have done that make you a great candidate. And it's just kind of like make sure to continue to build yourself up here. A little self-love. And always apply.
Wonderful. Definitely good advice. I feel like a lot of us do get nervous when we see that we don't have the whole full list of qualifications, and then we're like, oh, I guess I can't apply to that. So definitely great advice.
I have
Okay.
two too, where I'm like, I don't have all of these qualifications. I should still apply. And I still have to do it all the time to myself, remind myself that I can do it and I
Mhm.
should. So, yeah, everyone does that.
We're all in this together.
Yep.
Okay, how do you highlight some of your side projects? And by that I mean kind of school projects, extracurriculars, like that kind of thing that could help you get a job, but like aren't typically considered like real experience. So what really is real experience on a resume, I guess, is the question.
I would counter that those are real experiences. I have them on my resume too. Some of my school internships or group projects like practicum,
Mm,
they're on my resume, and I think they've been critical in some of the jobs that I've gotten in the museum and cultural heritage sector, or even in some of the conferences and grants that I've been able to apply for, right? Because you will probably have to have a resume, tailored to those as well.
mhm,
In my experience, I have. So I would say that if you've done a really great job and you're proud of something that you've accomplished, you should try to find a way to put it into your resume. Or if you can't put it into your resume, find a way to prepare for the interview where you can bring it up, because there will be questions that are kind of tailored where you can bring in those examples. And you can always add them to your CV. So they can be there and you can showcase it that way. Maybe it's not in that resume for that particular job, but it's definitely there. Um, so I have like a subheading in my CV where it is, public speaking in other engagements. I
mhm,
think it has a more fancy title, but it's basically that section. I have another one where it is internships and another one where it has volunteering experience. Um, and that's just how I formatted it. I did base it off of one of my favorite professors' CV. And so that's how I kind of figured out how to do that. Um, but I think all of those are real experience and they will come in handy later on down the road. So you should be proud of them and you should be able to showcase them.
definitely. What is one way you could to leverage LinkedIn to expand one's network and find a job? Like, did you struggle with this? Like, and like, did you, or well, could you speak to your experience with LinkedIn in general as well?
Absolutely. So I love LinkedIn. I also use Indeed. Those are the two places I've been able to get jobs online. Um, and my LinkedIn has, my CV on it, and it shows all my things that I'm interested in, and I follow and, connect with a lot of other professionals in my field. So getting started though, yes, that was like a hurdle. And it's still in the process. I continuously add to it because it is my CV. And I went and looked at some of the professionals that I really admire, and I
Mhm.
went and found their CVs and saw how they did their little statement about themselves, what they're searching for in a career. And I looked at how they strategized their profile. And I took bits and pieces that I really liked from multiple different professionals. And I, utilized them to create my own online brand. Indeed is a little bit easier, where it's just basically your CV and there's nothing fancy about it.
Mhm.
And you can change up your statements whenever you like. But LinkedIn, it's the professional Facebook. And I think just doing the research and looking around, to see who has really, made it a statement about who they are and what they do,
Mhm.
and trying to mirror that in the way that reflects you. So
Definitely.
I'm still doing it. It's
Yeah.
still a work in progress.
100%. I think one of the things that I've even found with that is like it's such a great way to network. One of the things I used to get really, really nervous about was like the fact that people can see if you've seen their profiles. And I used to make me so nervous. But then one of the people I ended up like kind of talking with, she mentioned to me, she's like, no, like it's actually really good. Like that's what it's for. Like that's how like we connect, like that, like that's the point of it. They'll see that you've like checked out their profile and then they'll check you out, and it's good. Like don't be nervous, like that's what it's for.
And the more that you're looking and checking out other people's profiles, it's actually showing that the commitment that you're taking to learn that network, right? So it shows that initiative that you're taking, and the time you're spending on, your resume, your career, your CV, and everything else, and the jobs you apply to. It will work out in the end. That it'll help you. So definitely spend some time with your LinkedIn and continue to spend time with it, because online marketing yourself it's a constant thing, and it's a struggle for a lot of people. So I do know that LinkedIn Learning has, some really great courses, and there's a lot of other videos out there about creating your LinkedIn. Even TikTok has some really, really great information out there. So once you find that TikTok, trend, it's great. But take the time to learn and look at other people's profiles to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually spent a lot of time in the summer on LinkedIn Learning because we used to have access to Western, so I kind of hope they'll bring that back somehow. I don't know.
Um, if you get a London Library card, shout out, uh, you actually have access to LinkedIn Learning.
Ooh, see, back everyone. Okay.
You have to pay a tuition fee. It's free. So yes, there's other ways for access there.
How do you deal with burnout during your job search or an internship search? Sorry.
Okay, I've been struggling with words today too. It's a daily thing. Okay, so burnout. I mean, I'm in a bit of a burnout myself right now, so I understand. Um, if you're taking the time to look at jobs in advance and keeping an eye on the job boards and seeing when, due dates for applications are coming up, you can structure it so you don't have to do them all at the last minute. You don't have to procrastinate, which I know is a thing that we all do a little bit of. That's okay. Um, so just put it in your calendar. Just set up it. So let's say the due date to apply is a month from now. Okay, so that gives you a few weeks. Each week, have something else done, just a little bit. Whether 1 week is research and adding, or like going through the job description and looking up in your CV, the specifics that you need to include. You don't have to just do it all in one day. I have done that, and that has caused a lot of burnout because usually it's a whirlwind of things you have to get done. All of a sudden, it's like 2 minutes to the deadline, and you're trying to structure one of those little emails to say, hey, please find attached. And then you're having all this self doubt about clicking send. Give yourself a little time to get through all of those instead of all at once within that hour. And yeah, just utilize your time, use your time management skills that you're learning through post-secondary, and just space it out. And then afterwards, when you have applied to a job, sit back and just relax. It's out there in the world. There's nothing else you can do. It's already sent. Even if afterwards you go in and you see that you have a typo, which I have done, and then you think about it and you self-criticize, just it's out there already. Go make yourself your favorite snack and go to bed. That's the best advice I can do, is just don't stress about it. It's already out there.
Yes, wonderful. I think another question I'm just going to throw in. It wasn't one of our prepared ones, but could you speak to the benefits and sort of pitfalls, I guess, of the easy apply button? Like, do you know what I mean? They have the quick apply.
I mean, that's how I've gotten jobs in the past. It's how I got my job now. So, I mean, it does work. You're still going in and you're still like making changes. Because even if you click the easy apply, you still have the option to go in and edit. And I always recommend that you do, whether it's that little short CV, like it's not CV, cover letter portion. Just go in and tune it up, so it's not so like standardized.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's a way to get, if you're really looking for a job right away because you need a job, that's a really great way to just go in and apply quickly and feel good about yourself actually getting those applications out there. There are good jobs on there, even with the easy apply. It doesn't mean anything different in job quality, right? So it's just a different process. I mean, most of the ones on Indeed are actually links to the job websites where there is an application. So even if it looks like an easy apply button, give yourself time, because usually it takes you to another website where you've got to fill in a ton of information.
Mhm.
Um, but I haven't found any pitfalls other than, they're getting a lot of applications, and you can see it'll say like this job ad has many applicants. um, but even if it says that, you should still apply, because maybe they're going to see something on your resume that stands out above the others.
Mhm.
So the only pitfall is that when it's an easy apply, there's going to be more applicants. That's like the biggest thing.
Definitely good to keep in mind, I think, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
So how do you follow up? Do follow up emails? Like you already sent your resume in. Like, should one always be doing that, or is that something that it just seems too eager or too, you know?
So I personally have never done a follow-up email, but a lot of my friends have. So we've both been successful in the job market. Neither of us have been more successful than the other. It also depends on the job you're applying to. If there is a message that immediately comes back to you and says you will be contacted later at such and such a date, if you're not contacted, then you didn't get the job, basically. Well, then there's no need for a follow-up, right?
Mhm.
Um, but if it's kind of an open-ended application and you're really keen, there's absolutely no reason you can't shoot them a follow-up email. Maybe your application got lost somewhere in the spam trap. You don't know. That's happened to me a couple times. And then there's nothing wrong with showing that you're keen. There's no such thing as like being too keen to get a job. So go ahead if you would like to shoot them a message, but always give them time. The job, if they're getting lots and lots of applications, they're not going to get back to you within a couple days. They're probably going to take a couple weeks. So if within a month or like half a month you haven't heard anything, but you're really excited about this job, you can reach out to them, and it will show initiative. It'll show that you're interested. And if they don't reply to you again, I mean, it's up to you if you want to send another one.
Mhm.
Um, but it could just be that cue that maybe you didn't get the job this time, but you should keep trying.
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's kind of use your intuition here and how much you really want that job. But yeah, if there's that automatic response, like we will let you know, then you're just, if you email that email, it's going to send you another automatic response. So it's a waste of your time.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, great. So, what is the best way to address commonly asked interview questions like "Tell me about yourself," especially within your job field? Or if you have any knowledge, does it apply work differently in different job fields? What's it most important for students to emphasize?
So it's kind of like they're almost like trick questions. You're going to want to make what you say apply to the job that you're you're applying
Mhm.
to. So for instance, when I applied to my library job, I told them how much, like, tell me about yourself. Well, I love literature, and I would explain to them how I love so many genres of literature, and this is a fact. Like, I enjoy it, but it's also not the only thing about myself. But it, in terms of it being relatable to the job, that would be like key. Or for instance, I love working with people. Like, that's a big thing about myself. Or if the job is more like remote, I enjoy independent work.
Mhm.
It's not untrue. It's just basically those skills that you put in that are like, I'm self motivated or I work well with others. You're going to emphasize those skills with this question.
Mhm.
Um, and draw it back to that job. Um, Another really common question is, what are your strengths and your weaknesses? That's like gives everyone heart palpitations when they're about to hear those. Like, how do I make myself not sound too cocky, but also like I don't want to come across as like self-deprecating. And so you want to take a skill that you're really proud of about yourself, and that's what your strength is,
Mhm.
and give an example of how that worked in like a team setting,
Mhm.
for example. And if for the other question where it's like, what's your weakness? Well, what's a weakness that you have that you're overcoming? Or something like that, something that you know about yourself, but that you're showing you're working on it. And how are you working on it? And what's your progress?
Mhm.
And that's how I've done my interview, those awkward interview questions.
Yeah, we've all had them. We're all going to keep having them, but with this advice, we're going to go forward and conquer them.
just just take it with grace.
Okay, great. So a nice little fun one, actually. I'm excited for this one. How do you get a mentor in your field? Is there any advice you can provide on this? Some things that students should and should not do? I feel like it's definitely a nerve-wracking thing to approach someone and be like, "Hey, can you be my mentor?" But like, there are definitely ways.
So I think it's more of a, you don't approach it immediately like, hey, be my mentor. It's a more of a you get to know that person.
Mhm.
And it's about researching what they're working on, the projects they're working on. I recommend doing this too if you're going into your master's or PhD. Like, you look at the faculty and you see who's kind of doing the cool projects that you're really interested in, and
Mhm.
see if they're accepting mentees. So like that's the key thing. Are they looking to mentor someone? You don't want to bog down someone who's literally said as a specific in their faculty profile, like, not really looking to be a mentor right now, because they usually say that they're interested in mentoring.
Oh.
Or yeah, so I've been doing a lot of research for my own masters, and I've been going through the FIMS department and seeing, um, who's doing the cool projects that I'm really interested in. Are they accepting people to work with, and so on and so forth. um, so also job experience helps. So if you're in a job that you eventually want to maybe do more work down the road, doing a master's, PhD, you can also talk to the people you're working with and ask them specific questions. You can find a mentor without naming your mentor,
Mhm.
right? So you can have multiple mentors. That's probably the best thing to do,
Mhm.
because they'll all be bringing you different skill sets and different learning opportunities. I think I don't have a mentor really, like one specific mentor. I know that there's been a couple professors who have really stood out and helped me immensely
Mhm.
throughout my undergraduate experiences. And I'm very grateful to them. And I made sure to get to know them. I would go to office hours, I would talk to them after class, I'd make sure to put an effort in them getting to know me.
Mhm.
And I was one of those people that didn't like to raise their hand in classes. I was extremely nervous doing presentations. I'm shaking right now. So like, I I get it. It's nerve-wracking. Um, but they're just people. Right? So don't bother them on their lunches. That's my biggest like,
Mhm.
tip there. I always send them an email to ask before you just show up at their door,
Mhm.
um, and get to know them so they know to put name to face,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah, I guess that would be the best things to do. I'm adding some of this into the document that you're gonna have. So how to ask people to be a reference or a mentor. So that will be there with more detail.
Love it. Yeah, no, I think it's actually really interesting that you also said that you're looking in the films department. Just like, you have a bit of a films, history, museum studies background, like a mix of things. But I think that's good advice because what I'm hearing is don't just stick to your own faculty, look at everywhere, right?
Especially in the arts and humanities where a lot of the jobs you apply to, there's going to be a mix of people that you're working with that are from all over the place.
Yeah.
um, Different faculties, different blending of faculties, and that's really the part of the beauty of arts and humanities. I've noticed in the library world, that the people I work with are all these different cool cats from all over the place. And they all have their own little interests. They all did different degrees. They all ended up in the same place that I'm in from various different backgrounds.
Mhm.
And from those various different backgrounds, they've been able to give me some really great advice moving forward. So yeah, absolutely. You're going to meet people from all different walks of life, and you might as well start that while you're on campus, or I guess online learning right now with that connection to campus.
Yeah.
Utilize that. It's key.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, like in a little bit of a interesting afterthought, I guess, after grad thought, I guess. But what are your thoughts on doing a gap year after undergrad, and like how do you incorporate that into your resume? Because I know one of the things that I hear very often is like a gap year is such a great experience, but when people see that on your resume, they get upset and they're like, why isn't there anything in this year? Why aren't they doing anything?
So I debunk this question in the guide because it's one of those debunkers. Um, yeah, take a gap year, go create some experiences 100%. And if, let's say, you're not getting a job right away in your field, just know that's most people. Going and working a job anywhere else, or just a job in particular, you will still get skill sets that will be able to apply later on down the road. And if your, let's say, potential employer asks you during an interview, sorry, I have a tickle. Um, if they ask you a question about what you were doing during that time, tell them that what you were doing and it was working in a different sector and the skill sets you learned, or maybe you were traveling, and then tell them about the experiences you took from that and how it broadened your horizons. That's a good way of putting it.
Mhm.
Maybe when you're taking a gap year, stay in touch with your field, whether it's volunteering or doing an internship or just asking an organization how you can help. It'll keep you in the loop, which is a really great thing. Just being current is a great thing. Make sure in your gap year, maybe you keep up with trends and news within your field that you want to go further into. Um, I do that with Facebook all the time. My whole Facebook is tailored to art news and history news and conservation and library work. And that's where I get a lot of my good content. It can be used strategically, social media, and it can keep you in the loop. But a gap year is fine. If anything, you're going to want a gap year so you don't burn out, so you don't fizzle out. Take some time to know what you'd like to do. And sometimes you don't find that when you're studying constantly. Sometimes you find that when you're going out and working in a totally different field. I thought I was going to be in museum studies for like the rest of my life. And I started working in a public library, and I realized how much I liked working with people. And that has drastically changed my career focus.
Mhm.
And I love what I do. So it took a bit of a gap year to figure that out.
Mhm.
And so there's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. Just stay in the know. That's the best advice I can give you.
No, I really like how you also spoke to like social media a bit because we've touched on like Facebook, we've touched on TikTok. I mean, I think you can kind of throw in Instagram and apply that in. And what's really interesting is that later this week we're going to be holding a little bit of an art entrepreneurship, arts and humanities workshop that's going to speak to that a little bit more in detail. So it's kind of a good segue, like a little good start to the week, I think, right?
If Google is tracking the things that you like and it's going to be influencing your Facebook and Instagram, make it match your interests within your career as well. Social media can be a very strategic tool as long as you want it to be. So utilize that 100%. I tell kids, not kids, I tell students all the time. Sorry, I'm just a little older. So I say kids once in a while. But you can make it work for you in a way that's productive for career searching, finding a mentor, finding someone who's really in that field that you'd like to talk to more. It's also great to reach out to people across the world, following those groups like, here's another shout out, the group of emerging museum professionals, which I sent you a link for that today. And it has so many workshops and tutorials about learning more in the field. So 100%, like you can use social media as a tool. It's great.
I didn't realize that that's the one you sent me because I'm actually on that already. And the head of that is potentially one of our panelists later this week.
That's so exciting. They're wonderful.
This is being recorded a little earlier for you guys watching, so I don't know, a little sneak peek, I guess, maybe. Okay, great. And last question, just to kind of circle things off, I guess. We've talked a little bit about the benefits of like school projects and stuff, but what's the value or benefit of having a creative side project, whether that's volunteering within or outside of academics, or having your own like side hustle, like a little business or what have you? Like, does that help you get into the field or help you gain that real experience, like when you're trying to enter the workforce? Like, can these kind of side projects help?
100% they'll help. So, so I'm an artist. I always say I do art, but I'm an artist. And, learning the tools of the trade and understanding like how to market your art, whether it's on social media or on a website. That means website building and curated content.
All
Those
the
are skills you're going to want, right? Or knowing how much to sell your art for, understanding that process. What's an artist's statement, or how do you come up with a contract? And knowing how to deal with problematic customers. Like those are all skills that you can use later on, and you don't necessarily have to have all of that on your resume. You can if you want. I have in mind that I'm an artist, and I do paint nights, for instance, and I do that for small businesses, for museums and churches and stuff, and it's about getting the community together. Also, volunteering is great, but only if you have time. So don't burn yourself out. So volunteer for an organization that you're really passionate about. It becomes like almost like a hobby, something that you enjoy going to. So I'm on the Norwich Museum and Archives board, right? So I love knowing more about my hometown and our local history and being able to get that out into the community. So whether that's in educational programming, which that's great on a resume, knowing how to do that, or writing grants, those are great. That's a great opportunity to get involved and develop skill sets that maybe you didn't get in your post-secondary degree. But yeah, and when you're volunteering, you can ask those people that you're volunteering for advice. They're great people to ask advice for in the field. So that's just another way of networking as well.
So important. And I think, well, just to go off of that a little bit before we finish up, one of the things that's really hard, I think, for students is to know what questions to ask, right? Because it's like, well, what advice should I ask for? I just don't know anything, or you think you don't know anything, I should say, right? Or have you? So, like, how would you navigate that? Like, what advice do you have for us for determining what questions to ask, what advice to ask?
If you have a question, there, I had a professor who always told me that there's no such thing as a dumb question,
Mhm.
and you have that question for a reason. It's there because you just don't have that knowledge. You might as well ask it. The worst thing that's going to happen is that they don't respond, right? But if you start developing relationships with people that you're volunteering with and that you're working with, creating a good work ethic, and trusting those people that you can ask those questions, because I know it's a bit of a fear to just ask something that might be like a standard, why don't you know this?
Mhm.
Just ask those people that you trust that you've been working with for a while.
Mhm.
And if you're really worried about, or you haven't developed those types of relationships yet, go to the services that are meant to help you with those questions. And so you can go to a public library to ask questions. They usually know where to point you in the right direction. You can ask your fellow students. Students are a great resource. A lot of the time, your peers might have a little bit of a know how. I found that a lot,
Very
right?
RAs, like anybody really, even just upper years in your class, I think, you know?
Members of the AHSC, VASA, the Museum Studies Collective, all of these organizations
Ask us things. We love you. We love to answer questions.
were literally made for people who need to have answers to questions.
Mhm.
So there's also the Facebook groups or that are really really handy about those textbooks groups even. So
I think this is every Western student's best friend.
right, and there's a group for all of that. There's usually, if you type it out, even in Reddit, you can ask questions in Reddit.
Aw.
Um, but just ask. It's better than sitting with that little nestling like doubt, like I don't have an answer to this. I think I should have an answer to this. It's generally a quick answer for
Mhm.
those. And you might as well just voice that question because I guarantee it, even if you're asking in class, there's someone else in that room who had exactly the same question, usually more than one. Sometimes that's when I've asked a question, that's how I've made friends after class, is because they're like, thank you for asking that. I had the same burning question. Thank you. And so just, yeah, I'm going to just emphasize that again. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Just ask.
Curiosity is your friend. It will get you far.
That's what we're taught in arts and humanities. Curiosity is like
It's
key.
everything.
Yeah.
Well, that was all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to pose for the arts and humanities students?
Um, I know that in interviews you're supposed to say yes. I have questions. Always been bad at those too. Um, I guess what I would just emphasize again is just reach out to the communities on campus, like FASA, AHSC, and MSC, and talk to us, and we'll help you out through this difficult and somewhat scary uh, thing where you're entering into your final years at university, just starting, or maybe going out into the world and trying to get into that emerging professional status. Come talk to us. We're all there. Um, and then I think I'm going to be staying on a little bit longer. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email. They'll point in the right direction.
So today we're also going to be doing a live email response, not so much exactly a live Instagram, but the Jess's email will be available to you for a certain amount of time, and you're welcome to email her, and she will respond to you as quick as she can for that. Any advice you have, or any advice you need for that. And just to add on to what Jess was saying, later this week we're gonna kind of finish up our career week with a resources guide to on-campus resources that you might not have heard of or might not know too much about, but they exist and they're great resources. So we really want you to like know about them and use them. So yeah, look out for that. And thank you so much for tuning in.
That awkward little pause.